First, let me explain why the Allies actually lost World War II. Hundreds of thousands of Wehrmacht and SS soldiers survived the war. Germany still had plenty of undamaged housing when the war ended. Germany as a country continued to exist and prospered. The so-called rat lines, established by the Catholic Church and several Western intelligence services, smuggled multiple SS officers and Nazi leaders to South America, where they integrated into society and helped turn more countries into fascist police states, effectively a repeat of Nazi Germany in Argentina, Chile, and elsewhere. Nazi scientists behind Nazi Germany's ballistic missile program became famous scientists and scientific leaders in NASA and elsewhere. SS officers survived as political leaders and became heads of state and even UN chief. And lastly, Nazism survived as an idea. It still exists on the internet, and neo-Nazi terrorists still murder people around the world. Therefore, the Allies lost World War II. By surviving the war, the Nazis won, and Nazism was victorious. Do the people who believe Hamas won the war it launched on October 7th see how absurd this line of reasoning is? I've heard it from good people I admire, but they are wrong. I've heard it from the kooks of the Free Palestine cult, and, on top of being vicious anti-Jewish racists and genocide supporters, their claim shows how absurdly stupid they are. How can it be both a genocide and a victory? If Hamas was winning, their so-called progressive supporters wouldn't need to be begging and screaming for ceasefire now on their behalf. Israel has regained superiority in the air, after being very hesitant for years, to operate over Lebanon and Syria, the densest air defense network in the world. Both those air defense systems have been completely destroyed. Some 120 Israeli planes flew unmolested over Iran and destroyed its most advanced air defense components. And that was before Syria was lost to Iran's axis of Islamist terrorists. After Iran's ballistic missile attacks on Israel, did it no strategic damage? The Israeli Air Force knocked Iran's ballistic missile program back a couple years or more in a single air attack. The only reason Israel hasn't decimated Iran's oil industry, the main revenue source of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, is because former U.S. President Joe Biden's administration protected it. Israel has uncontested air supremacy in the entire region, flying multiple times for thousands of miles to hit Yemeni ports, through which the goat herder Houthis import their missiles from Iran. This after President Biden forced the U.S. Navy to only play defense, swatting at the cruise missiles shot at them and international shipping for months. One of Israel's biggest achievements in this war was to break Biden out of the spell his spineless, quote-unquote, progressive advisors put on him, convincing him that the U.S. shouldn't and couldn't do a thing against Iran and its Houthi clients. Suddenly, Biden understood he looks pathetic, sitting on top the largest air force and most professional navy in the world, yet refusing to attack one of the most illiterate and poor militaries in the region. Israel has also regained the initiative and dominance on the ground. Before the war, two highly trained terrorist armies, Hezbollah and Hamas, were boldly planning to invade and hold major territory inside Israel, with many thousands of highly trained, heavily armed, and experienced, in the case of Hezbollah, commandos poised right on the border, adjacent to Israeli villages and towns. Hamas pushed all their chips in, gave it their most murderous shot, and lasted 2 days inside Israel. Their ability to fight as an organized army ended many months ago. Once Israel ignored Biden's prohibition to go after the safe zone he idiotically created in Rafah for Hamas. For months, Hamas terrorists have been hiding between civilians and in tunnels, avoiding contact as much as possible, reduced to a rabble of poorly trained, newly recruited child soldiers who can't stop the IDF from taking any territory it wants in Gaza. The elite Nukba force is nearly fully dead or captured. Their remainder, hiding like cowards among civilians in al-Mawasi tents, just made the mistake of donning uniforms in victory, quote-unquote. And more of them died in bombings recently. prompting Hamas to order its terrorists to once again masquerade as civilians. But their faces and identities are known, and it's a matter of time until they're all dead for daring to enter Israel. Hezbollah's much larger and more dangerous Radwan commando force failed at its mission, ran away in fear, and were decimated from the top down. Their forward operating bases, underground shelters, and weapons depots have been blown up. Their firing positions are still being blown up after the ceasefire took hold, and neither Hezbollah nor their United Nations interim force in Lebanon helpers dare stop the IDF. So, this is a Hamas victory, right? Ignore that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has added all kinds of conditions Hamas never agreed to before. Back when the Biden administration couldn't help but embolden Hamas to reject deals, while he and his vice president, Kamala Harris, trashed Israel in the press again and again to appease the Free Palestine cult and their progressive admirers. So this must be a victory of Hezbollah, right? Ignore that Hezbollah has begged for a ceasefire after claiming it'll continue firing daily until Hamas gave them the thumbs up to stop. Ignore that Israel keeps pummeling Hezbollah members and weapons depots for ceasefire violations, and Hezbollah doesn't dare fire at Israel. Like Hamas, the Islamist terrorists of Hezbollah also flew flags and claimed victory, but nobody in Lebanon believes them. After decades of holding Lebanon's sovereignty by the throat, the new U.S.-aligned Lebanese president is unafraid of Hezbollah. Okay, so surely the Islamic Republic of Iran has emerged victorious after losing their strategic multi-decade investment in their proxy strategy. Both Hamas and Hezbollah lost nearly all their strategic missiles and commando forces, as well as the entire political and military leadership Iran has trained and cultivated for decades. Iran lost its investment in Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps bases on Israel's border with Syria. It lost the huge professional artillery and anti-aircraft force of the Syrian army. It lost its own ability to stop Israel and others from flying bombing sorties across its territory. Another massive victory right there. Look, the fact that Netanyahu couldn't deliver a quote-unquote total victory is because he promised too much in order to keep his governing coalition from fracturing. Nobody but Netanyahu and his fans ever considered those as realistic goals. Israel has never destroyed entire Arab militaries in earlier wars, and it's never been in the cards to completely destroy Hamas or Hezbollah. What Israel needed to do is to deeply degrade its enemies, as well as kill those who planned and launched this war. Israel has reversed decades of Iranian efforts in 15 months, wiping out that regime's strategic plans for the region. And there's nobody alive in the leadership of Hezbollah or Hamas that went into this war assured of the weakness of Israel and the certainty of their victory. Israel needed to renew its deterrence with decisive victories on the battlefield. Before the war, Netanyahu spent over a decade appeasing Hamas with Qatari money and work permits for Gazans to do day jobs in Israel. He tried and failed to contain Hamas and Hezbollah. He spinelessly avoided stopping the buildup of military force on Israel's borders. The IDF literally was barely allowed to move along Israel's own borders. Remember Hezbollah's tents right outside Israeli territory? Now Hezbollah and Hamas hide in tunnels and among civilians, and Israel is operating freely in their heartland. If you join the Free Palestine cult in considering this war as the Islamists' victory, if the ruins of Gaza and Shia strongholds in Lebanon are how you measure a jihadist's win, may more victories like this one befall the Islamists and jihadists in the Palestinian territories, Lebanon, Syria, and Iran. I'll take this quote-unquote Hamas victory any day.